This recording was produced by the KAYNBAKODESH Studios in Los Angeles.
Good evening and welcome to the CHANA alumni event with DEVORA KRASNIANSKI. DEVORA is a dating and relationship coach who really gets the young people of today. She's also the founder of the Adayad Institute, an organization dedicated to the success of marriage. It's not just getting them under the chuppah, but also helping them through the marriage. DEVORA and her website are brimming with a wealth of resources and guidance. On her website, you'll find recordings of professional speakers and experts addressing a full range of topics, from Shidduchim to Shalom Bayis and more. DEVORA will enlighten us tonight with her wisdom and insight by shining a light on a mother's role in Shidduchim. And then she'll be addressing our daughters at 6:30, Emret Hashem. In the schus of all of us coming together from literally four corners of the world, Hashem will certainly open the channels of unlimited chesed and brachos to help us find the bashert for our single with ease and clarity. So please sit back and enjoy. We're going to start with Torah, Tefillah, and Tzedakah. This week's Parsha, Parshas Veschanan, Moshe reviews the history of our relationship with Hashem. At first, we fell in love with Hashem and His perspective. At our wedding at Har Sinai, Hashem showed us a glimpse, and in that moment, we knew there was nothing else significant in the world other than Hashem. But then, the wedding, the Sheva Brachas, the honeymoon wore off, and as the excitement faded, we realized how vastly different Hashem's perspective is to our own. We wondered, is this relationship viable? So Moshe Rabbeinu answered, cover your eyes twice a day and say Shema Yisrael. We close our eyes because we sometimes need to put our own perspective aside. We acknowledge that we are able to close our eyes, remove ourselves, even momentarily, from our own interpretation and perspective. What can we learn from this? Well, sometimes spouses don't agree with us. Sometimes we don't see things their way. Sometimes we don't see eye to eye with our children. That does not mean our relationship is doomed to fail. How can we strengthen and bond and enhance our closeness? In a fundamental exercise, before we can begin to compromise or negotiate, we must take one important step, the one that will allow further growth to occur. It's for each to accept that the other has a legitimate perspective. As parents, we each must practice closing our eyes to our own perspective, at least for a moment, and learn how to see our child's reality. Then our children can once again open their eyes, get in touch with their own mind and heart, and over time, learn how the different and occasionally opposing perspectives can not only coexist, but actually complement each other, leading to a far deeper and more interesting relationship. By seeing our children through their eyes and their perspective, looking for the bashert based on who they truly are, we may be able to find their bashert with more ease, clarity, and hopefully even sooner. As the coordinator of the CHANA Los Angeles SHIDDUCH initiative, I have a database of close to 175 California girls, ranging from ages 19 to 40. If you have a son looking for a wonderful out-of-town California girl, please PM me for suggestions. It's truly an honor to do this event with the well-renowned DEVORA KRASNIANSKI. If your daughter or son is looking for clarity during or after dating, DEVORA is an expert Shidduch coach, has guided many married young men and women through the dating process. Please have a notebook and pen handy to take notes. You will learn a lot. So without further ado, DEVORA, firstly, can you please share with us briefly what it is you do and how you got involved in this holy work?
Okay, so I'm DEVORA KRASNIANSKI. I live in Cedarhurst, New York. And I grew up in Crown Heights, so I am immersed in the Crown Heights community. I'm a Lubavitch, Chabad. Years ago, I noticed that there was a gap in how people were preparing for marriage and how it actually impacted them as they were starting into their marriage and beyond. And I found that there really wasn't a complete source that was addressing the moving people through the pre-dating, through the dating, however long that takes, through the engagement and into the early marriage. And I felt that there's lots of people who are doing some wonderful work, but there wasn't something cohesive. So I started Adayad, which using the Rebbe's words of Binyan Adayad. I just shortened it to Adayad because I felt that the Forever, Forever piece was a very strong piece. And so when we started, I started a course for young people to come in person, and then we brought a lot of the material online, and then moved from there. It's like if they're getting engaged strongly, now let's get them married strongly. I go with the coaching, education, awareness side of Shidduchim, not so much on the Shadchan side. I did dabble in it, so I do understand the Shadchan side of it as well. I'm friends with many Shadchanim because they send their clients or their people to me, and so we talk about the challenges that people are reaching and the challenges that the Shadchanim have with the families that they're working with, some challenges that they're noticing a new trend happening with the young people. So I'm very immersed on both sides of it, from the Shadchan side and what they're noticing, and from the young people and families, moms and sometimes dads. I speak to the young people, I speak to young men and young women separately usually, but sometimes when they're almost engaged and they need to work something through, I will talk to each one of them as a part of a couple or as a couple. So Adayad also addresses, we got a grant for domestic abuse, so if you notice it on the website, that's where our little bit of money is coming from, is this grant. Not to say that there's equal amounts of shidduchim happening and domestic abuse, but unfortunately there is a small segment, and that's where the grant from the city of New York came from. So that's pretty much what I do all day, in addition to everything else that I do all day. So I'm very much involved. Every day, Adayad sends out a marriage tip under the topic of just one thing. It's sent by WhatsApp, or you can pick it up on Facebook, but I prefer that you get it on WhatsApp. Then I have a larger list that I can show potential funders. Look how many people are following it. So I will put out that information, and I would love for you to join us from WhatsApp, but you can find it on our website and on Facebook and Instagram. And periodically we also have conference calls, webinars, different ways of learning. We had a whole series of newlyweds of Corona because they have their own interesting challenges where there's no playbook to deal with. We did a series on dating during Corona, especially back in March. Now it's become a little bit more, Zoom has become a little bit more norm, and we'll talk about that. But back in March, April, it was very new and very scary for a lot of people. So we tried to normalize it and make sense of it. And I'm glad that we did, because Corona is going on longer than we had originally anticipated back in March. I'm glad to see that dating has changed a little bit. So that's the background of what Adayad is up to and where we started from. And I'm really excited I saw some of the questions that came in advance, and definitely you can send the questions throughout. That's so anonymous that I don't see who sent it. Never mind that nobody else can see who's sending it. I don't even see who sent it, but if you want a private answer, you will have to give me some sort of identifying information. So you have that option, but I will not know who sent the questions. And Leah will share that information in the chat box, so you can, or you must have gotten on the same WhatsApp that you got this link, so you have that. In any case, it's adayad.org/ask-anonymous-question. So Leah, do you want to start with the questions that came in? Where should we be finding the shidduch? Who should we be talking to? Many people think, okay, my kid is old enough to start shidduchim, and that's the whole topic is my kid old enough? And when I say kid, I really am shortcutting that for meaning my adult child. But instead of saying my adult child throughout this conversation, I may say kid, even though I really mean an adult who happens to be your child. And if they're old enough to get married, they're an adult, or they ought not to be getting married. right? So there is a big part that you're advocating, you're working on their behalf. You're an agent on their behalf, because if they're old enough to get married and make the decisions that a married person needs to be making in adult life, then they should be part of their shidduch journey. I mean, of course, they're part of the shidduch journey. They're the ones who are actually meeting the young men, or the young men meeting the young women, but they should be part of it. You're acting as their agent. What I'm going to share throughout is my perspective, and different people may come at it from a different way. There's no playbook for shidduchim. Shidduchim happen from anywhere, and most creative ways and unusual ways, and then there's several that happen in the more typical ways, whatever typical means. But shidduchim can happen from anywhere. So while some people may say, okay, my adult child is old enough to get a shidduchim, who are the best shadchanim to use? That's, after we determine who they are and what to put on a profile, if to have a profile, which I think we're going to get to, because some of those questions. But one of the big questions are, who are the best shadchanim? And while it's an important question, I think that the question should be slightly different, is where can I possibly find the shidduch? My own daughter has an unusual story. We did not find her shidduch through a shadchan. My classmates, based Rivka High School, we graduated in the 80s. So one of our classmates was making a wedding. People were sitting around the table, classmates chatting, came up with an idea, shidduch happened, they got married. And I thought that was lovely. But what about my classmates that are not in New York? So, I mean, I happen to live close enough to New York, so I'm not in New York, but I always think about my friends who are not in New York and really don't get to have class reunions from time to time. And so we made a conference call of my class and a class above us and a class below us. So people that we all knew each other from 20-something years. And we chatted around, we went around the virtual room and we said who we were and about our kids. And my daughter shidduch came directly from that phone call. So an unusual, it was no shadchan, it was a classmate of mine who thought of her neighbor's son. And so it took a few months and they actually got married. And I did it again because I knew it worked. And in gratitude to Hashem, I did it again. And another shidduch came from that next phone call. So again, it did not come from any shadchan. This came from friends talking. So yes, I always say network. You don't need to find your shadchan that works, the shadchan that works for so many people. So yes, shadchanim can be a part, but when we pull it back to what is the key that we're trying to do is, where is my shidduch coming from? It can come from anywhere. Two moms were chatting in the nail salon, and they made a shidduch of their son and daughter. Shidduchim can happen from anywhere. And while the shadchan is one way, it is not the end-all way, and definitely don't rely on one shadchan. And you may find that some shadchanim work better for your working style, for your family style, and some shadchanim work well for so many other people, or whatever that means, but doesn't work well for you. You don't have to use her. And you definitely are not, again, in my perspective, you're not beholden to any one shadchan or any two shadchan. Don't put your all your eggs in one basket, or two baskets, or three baskets. I find that unofficial survey is that more shidduchim happen from networking and friends than from the shadchanim. Just to say how it works for shadchanim is last in, first out. Like if you were they mentioned, basically they remember the last four people who came to them, unless someone is very unusual. Then they remember them for either because they're amazing or because they're unusual in some other way. But mostly it's like, here's a new guy that came to me. Oh, the last four girls who came by way, A, B, C, D, and E. Okay, that's five. And they say, here, take some names. Shadchanim, and it's human nature. We don't have long memories, tons of stuff. Even if they have a database and they jot down their notes, they're not going to remember their notes. And even if they have a database where they're going that has an algorithm that pulls out names that kind of match, it's not always the quality matches. Not that they're not quality people. Everyone's quality, but a quality match for you. So just because a shadchan knows lots of people doesn't mean that your shidduch is going to come from them. It could be, but many times they're just throwing darts and you're doing all the work. They're giving you, here's four names that match, and like one of them is married. One of them is your niece. I mean, so while I love the Shadchanim, most of them as people, they will all tell you, don't rely on me. I mean, to tell me in the background, don't rely on me. They may not tell you that as a client, but I'm telling you that don't put too much hope in the Shadchanim. Not to say that they're not good, but network, be creative, find other ways.
Thank you so much, DEVORA. So, DEVORA, can you please give us tips on how to do research? What questions should we ask?
Okay, so when you and your adult child figured out how they want to present themselves to the world, of course they are presenting themselves, but how they want to be put onto a tiny little profile, like what, and I think that we're going to have a question about the profiles. I just want to keep it more or less in order, the questions that came in. But when you know what she's looking for, when you have agreed that you both understand. So basically the way I suggested is like, so this is how I understand, this is what I understand you're looking for. This is what I understand the life that you're looking for. And your daughter says, yes, that's true. Like you want to make sure that you're on the same page, you're using the same definitions, you're using the same language to understand the same things. Once you're really on the same page, then you know what you're looking for. So of course you're looking for a mensch. Who doesn't want a mensch? Who doesn't want someone kind? Who doesn't want someone respectful? Those are things that you want to of course ascertain. But then there's the parts that are unique to who she is. And that's what you're really looking for, because I just want to put it out that there's different perspectives of how much research to do. And I want to share both of them, and then there's a whole gray area in between that matches your own personality, matches your time. So some people say, I want to find out everything I can, and I want to know that he's a mensch and whatever, and then my kid just see if they work, and so that, and that's, and if they feel comfortable with each other, it's a shidduch, and they move on to the next stage. Other people say, I just want to make sure that I'm not wasting my kid's time, that it's in the right realm, but let the two adults decide if they're there for each other. So obviously, if you're doing the second version of, I just want to make sure that they're a healthy person, and I want to make sure that it makes sense, that if they decide together that this shidduch makes sense, that they're not getting into a nice family or whatever, few things that are super important to you. So obviously, if you're going to leave most of it to the daters themselves, you do less research, right? I mean, that's just, for the other people who do tons of research, like in the Hasidic world, they can spend months doing research, finding out everything about every time they sneezed. That's an exaggeration, I hope. But so that's the two perspectives. So if you go, but basically what you're looking for is that you understand that they are evolved, and whatever that means to you, evolved, how mature they are, how much they can see the world in beyond just black and white, that they understand that people have different perspectives. To me, that's one of the most important things to look for, is that growth mindset, that understanding of we can have different perspectives, we can disagree, and we can still respect each other. That's super important. And I tell the people when you're researching, and I tell the daters how to more or less try to see that in the other person, and of course to see if they themselves, because if they're not fully evolved and they don't know how to see someone else's perspective, they should work on that before they move into a marriage.
Thank you so much. Okay.
But I just want to put in one more thing.
Yes, go ahead.
What is the most important question to ask? What do you mean by that? You want to make sure you're working off the same definition.
Give me an example. You would say.
So give me an example. What do you mean by that? And the way I usually end off the research is, so this is how I understand it in a nutshell. Did I get that right? Is there anything that you want to add? Because you want to make sure you're working off the same definition. Outgoing can mean a lot of different things. Sneeze can mean a lot of different things. And there's a whole range. So what do you mean by that, to get onto the same definition?
How much should I push my child to start dating? How do I know if my child's even ready?
Again, I'm going to share a couple perspectives and see how that resonates with your family and your relationship with your adult child. Ideally, your adult child should say, I'm ready for this next stage. That would be perfect. You know that they think that they're ready. Sometimes they think that they're ready, or they want to get on with it, but they're not really evolved and they're not really mature, and they are so wishy-washy that they're not really ready. But ideally, if they say that they're ready, then they are telling you that they're ready. What's happening now is that girls 21 are still not sure if they want, and they sometimes need that push to say, what are you waiting for? What are you using this wait time for? And sometimes they don't want to talk to their parents. And that's something that we have to it just is. And you can't force yourself as being their advocate. For a variety of reasons, many young people don't feel their parents are the best person to talk to. Whether it's none of you, but if someone wants to say, I don't want to marry someone, like a son will say, I don't want to marry someone like you, Ma, or Ma, I don't know how you put up with Tati. I'm not interested. It's a little bit harder for a kid to say that. So they may want to talk to somebody else. If you're finding that they're not really opening up to you, then suggest that they talk to someone else. It could be a mashpia, it could be a coach, but it should not be someone only their age. It has to be someone wiser. Now you could ask, who is this person? So that you get a sense. But if you're getting a sense that they're getting good advice anyway, you sometimes don't even have to know who that person is. But to push, it's a very big responsibility to push someone into a life choice, because they're the ones who really have to live with the repercussions. Of course, you get the residual repercussions, and you get the blame, and you get everything else. But so I'm not a big proponent of pushing. I would rather ask questions like, what is holding you back? What is going on for you? What are your thoughts? And really be really curious, rather than say, what do you mean? You're 22 already? Because that's not going to get you good answers. It's not going to get you a good relationship.
Thank you. So profiles, what should be included in a profile? Right?
Oh, profiles. There was a time that there were no profiles.
Wow.
Maybe it was because the world was smaller. And so everybody knew everybody on Montgomery Street and Crown Street. And then the three people who didn't live on Montgomery Street and Crown Street, everyone knew the person who lived in California, and the one person who lived in Philadelphia, and the two people who lived in Miami. But the world is bigger. And so profiles came in to address that the world is bigger. And there's more people. What profiles has now turned into is whole resumes. And I want to put out a few perspectives of what to do with it, and see what resonates again with where you stand and the whole thing. So it used to be back in the day when there was no profiles, is that you needed a few phone numbers of references. So the other person said, okay, let me go get my Rolodex, and she's reading out a phone number for you, and you have to go find a pen, and you're writing down the numbers. And then you lost the paper, so you have to call her again, and then you have to leave a message on her not her voicemail. It was an answering machine back then. Okay, so the first people, Chacham said, okay, I'll just send you a fax of all the numbers, and you want to know who the Machatanim are? I'll add the Machatanim. You want to know what high school she went to? I'll add that. That's the beginning of the evolution. And so I call that a reference sheet. That's very helpful. It doesn't say anything about the single. It just says all the information that is not a big deal. Then someone said, okay, but if I give you a little description, you'll remember her better, or you'll remember him better. And then became the description piece. And then people were saying, look what it says in this description. It doesn't say this. So they put a Rashi and a Taisvis on it. Well, why doesn't it say this? Why doesn't it say that? I'm of the perspective that use a reference sheet. The shadchan, whoever's making the suggestion, and when I say shadchan, I mean in the broadest sense, whoever's making the suggestion should describe the person and how they know them, in what context they know them. And here's the reference sheet of the phone numbers. Some people say, okay, that's great if there's if I get a lot of suggestions, or if my daughter or son get a lot of suggestions, that's great. Someone's representing them. But if no one's even knowing about them, I at least want to have their information, some description about them out there in the general world. And that's where profiles started getting more of more prominence. But the challenge is, like I've done this, it's happened several times, is that I've described the context in which I know this young woman and I know this young man, and then I send the profile that the mother or the father had given me, and has a little description. Goes, no, I don't, but the writing in the description doesn't. And so anything that I had just said has been negated by the forward. Look what she chose. The family chose to write those words. So what you're saying, I don't believe. I mean, I'm as a friend, so I'm not like lying, but those are the words that they chose. I'm going to give that more weight than what you said. So I am a big proponent, as you can hear, of having a reference sheet and not a profile. But I do understand why people want to have descriptions out there. So what I suggest is a couple things. If you want to have a sort of a hybrid. Firstly, put a date of this. This was created on or updated as of a certain date. Because if someone has changed their friends from 4 years ago, or they've really evolved since then, you don't want those references around, but this paper flies around because that's. So I would put a created date. If you want it to only be in the other reason why people have descriptions is for the Shidduchim to remember. So you may want to write for Shidduchim use only. And then if someone sees a piece that says for Shidduchim use only, they realize that it's not for everybody and that the Shidduchim did something wrong by sharing it, and then you know not to trust the Shidduchim. And I would put it pretty high up so the Shidduchim remembers that this is a for Shidduchim use only. The other thing just to put out there is many people put the age on the profile, but if this profile is floating around for a couple of years, the age changes. So I suggest to put the year of birth. You don't have to put an exact birthday so someone can daven for their birthday on their birthday. Some people say it's a security risk, privacy risk when you're giving out of someone's full name and their date of birth. That was a beginning of privacy. So you can just write the year of birth, especially as people get older, and you don't want to, let's say, having a December birthday is different than having a January birthday. So those are some things that, as far as the profile.
Great points. Thank you. What is a mom's role when the child comes home from the date? What could she do when her child is confused or not sure? At what point should a parent step out? It's a very big question. As the dating progresses, is there a time that the shadchan should take a back burner approach? And
okay, so there's a lot here.
Yes, so it's a lot.
There's a lot here. I think I like how you wrap them all in together because it's one of the role of the advocate or the outside person, because a lot of the thinking has to be done by the person who's potentially marrying this person because they're the ones who are really living that life.
Right.
We can think, oh, that's a wonderful shidduch, or finally I found someone that makes sense. So we do project our feelings. So the better you know how to hold back your feelings or your frustrations or your excitement, the more like a coach is not as involved in the family. That can be a little bit more objective. So I sometimes would, not that I'm looking for more business, but I'm not looking for more business. Sometimes it's really the right thing for the family is to have an outsider. But let's assume that there is I'm going to take the question from the point that the family's good. I mean, the family gets along well and they understand each other. They're working off the same definitions. So the mom's role is to be the sounding board. It's not to say, oh, so if he said that, then that means that. Inferences are terrible. As a coach, I always say, so let's unpack that. What do you think he meant by that? And if she says, I don't know, and that's a wonderful opportunity to go back into the conversation, because if you marry someone, you're going to have a lot of misunderstandings. So let's see how we can do a misunderstanding. The Shalom Task Force, who works with domestic abuse, does a workshop on red flags. And one of the things they say is do not commit to marriage until you've had a conflict. And they don't mean a fight. They just mean something to see how you have differences of opinions, how you resolve things together. So this is a wonderful opportunity to what your role as the adult can be. So let's see how we can plan how to bring this question up, because sometimes it's a difficult question to bring up. I felt uncomfortable, but remember, I always tell my clients, you're going to be uncomfortable with your husband from time to time. So see how it feels to bring something up. See how afraid you are before, how you felt heard or not heard, how he responded, how you felt afterward. So it's a blessing to have something that you're not sure about. But that's the role of the parent, is to help her firstly recognize it and maybe to come up with some language for that conversation. What's the role of the shadchan? Well, there's several roles of a shadchan takes, but sometimes a shadchan is really good at connecting people. They understand how to read people, and that's their strength. Coaching is a whole different part. Like when we were breaking down the role of, when I was dabbling in trying to make a program for shadchanim, we came up with like 4 or 5 roles that a shadchan takes. One is to come up with the idea. One is to present the idea, because you have to present it. If the shadchan presents it in a way of like, I have this idea, but don't kill me. It's like, don't bother. Like, don't even bother, right? So there's how they present it. And then there's the secretary work of passing the Dar Yesharim and the what day will work, That I think is a waste of the shadchan's skill and time. And then there's the coaching piece. And then there's the closing. It doesn't have to be the same person. And many times someone who has a strength in one area is not strong in a coaching place. So that's maybe a reason why some people will say, thank you, shadchan. First, I don't need you to be the go-between mom. Like we can just text each other and work at our own schedules. We don't need it. Not that we're dismissing you. It's just that it's an extra step. So mommy calls the daughter figures it out, and then the mommy has to call the shadchan calls the other mommy. It's just a hoopla. And so that's one of the reasons why people move past the shadchan. The other time is that they intrude or they push. After 6 dates, you should know. If you don't like the way she's working on your behalf. If you don't like the way she's working, say, figure it out. But some people like to keep the shadchan involved all the way through because he doesn't want to propose if he's not sure he's going to get a yes. I have to say that if you don't know that you're going to get a yes, you should not be proposing. You don't need someone to ask mommy to ask the girl if she's ready to be proposed to. He should have a good sense. And if he's not, then someone's trying to rush the process along a little too fast. So that's my perspective. The shadchan should be involved. Because they put the effort in the beginning, you should tell them what we're up to, but you don't need them all the way through.
So when you're saying
go ahead.
The shadchan can fall out, you're saying later on as the date picks up steam and is a little bit a life of its own. But until you get to that point, you need the shadchan to give you the back and forth.
Well, yes and no. I think that if you're potentially marrying this person and you're an evolved person and you're okay with things not working out, they should have more of the conversations that people use a shadchan for should be done between the two young people themselves. And they're going to marry. There's potentially marrying each other with all kinds of fun conversations that we married people have. They have to try it out.
When one travels to the other to date, what should the host family know?
Okay, so many times, it's evolving a little bit, but many times it's the boy traveling to the girl's hometown. It is evolving a little bit, but assuming you're the mother of the girls, meaning there's buffers coming to your town. Most of you are from Los Angeles, or I'm assuming from Los Angeles, but if you're not, then it's a little bit different. Los Angeles is a big city. There is kosher food. And many people do have friends where they can stay in Los Angeles. And people do know where the few Lubavitch shuls are and where the mikveh is. So while it would be nice, and it shows what a great mother-in-law you potentially are, is that you're actually concerned about where he's going, that he knows what's happening in town. But imagine if someone's going to small town USA and they don't know. They don't know where the closest mikveh is, and they don't know where to stay. They don't know that there is a shliach only 5 miles away. They don't know that because you didn't tell them that. So they've spent hours trying to find out who's the closest shliach. So you can understand where that could go. I know someone that ate his mother-in-law's food while he was dating because it was the only kosher food in the area. She packed it up really nicely, and she didn't want to intrude, so she left it. They got him an apartment to stay in, so he shouldn't spend money. They had access to an apartment from a balabas, so why should he spend money in a hotel when they have this apartment from a balabas? So he loved his mother-in-law, and it's working out really great. So yes, you really have to consider that. Also consider, what is he going to do all day? So you can give him a list of what to do. And again, it's while it's practical, it also shows a certain amount that you're thinking about them. And the flip is, like, if you have the boy and the girl is coming to you, it's similar. The mikvah, the minyan, is less important, but think about, where you live, you have a sense of who she is. What does she need to know? Do you have a place for her to stay? What is she going to do? Like, is Uber an option, or should, Uber is now really it is an option. Well, not necessarily COVID. I don't know what's happening in LA, but it was an option. But for a while before, it was a rent a car. And that becomes an expensive deal, because otherwise what's she doing all day? And the other thing to think about is sharing costs of transportation, of flying. And if you know that the other family, it's going to be hard on the other family and it's not as difficult for you, then share, then offer to share. That's a place where you might bring the shotgun in, just to offer so they know how to finesse it to the other family. That not that we, God forbid, think that you're poor, and so that's why we're offering, but just do it nicely. Because the shotgun should be knowing the other family a little bit. I have to say, LA is a better place than Minnesota in the winter. LA has things to do, so it's not as difficult, but if someone's from Minnesota or boring Winnipeg, no offense to Winnipeg, it's a little bit harder to convince the guy to get out there. And it's expensive. These flights to these small town USA or small town Canada or small town Europe, it's hard. I love Zoom. I love that Corona happened and made Zoom a little bit more normalized.
Speaking of Zoom and long distance dating, what do you recommend? What are things to know?
I always thought that Zoom was a great idea. And that became normalized. Back in March, I heard lots of people saying, I would never date in Zoom. And now some guys are saying, girls are saying, hey, that was good. It started at 8:30. So at 8:26, I was ready. And I didn't have to worry about the rain. I didn't have to worry about parking. And I didn't have to worry about checking out the venue before. So the guys like that. And it's over at 10. Whenever it's over, it's over. And you can just throw off your shoes, or you didn't even have to wear shoes in the first place, right? So a lot of people do like that. And a lot of people have found that having a little cheat sheet of what they're going to say or how they're going to present what they're going to have to present. So people are liking Zoom. They're starting to see the positives of it. I would say that Zoom, having the initial meetings on Zoom, like 1 or 2, just to see if this is something shaykh to fly for, is becoming more regular, and it's not as weird as it was 6 months ago. There are, like I did a whole thing on Zoom dating, so there's a whole bunch of tips, like very practical, very nuanced tips on that. So you can check that out on the website. But I love the idea of Zoom. I think it was like one of the biggest silver linings of COVID. It starts as you started and you end it, and that's it. Exactly. And generally Zoom dates are shorter, so people do like the shorter. But the Zoom dates are shorter because you get like Zoom fatigue. It's hard to just look at a little screen. So they're generally shorter. People through engagement, not fully through Zoom. At a certain point, they have to meet in person. But I've moved them through that. And he would never have gone to her small town USA on a good day.
Why should my child date or marry someone with a medical condition?
Everyone has something. The joke in the psychology world is, do you know that, are you taking medicine for something you know, or should you be taking medicine? Like everyone has something. So not everyone has something necessarily mental health, but everyone has something. Whether it's a medical condition, whether it's a family, no one has a perfect life. As much as we try to portray that to the world, no one has perfect. So why should I get that imperfect? I'd rather go for an imperfect that I don't know. But really what I have found for the people that I know that have medical conditions or interesting family situations, if they haven't collapsed from it, which then they're not evolved and they're not mature and they're not ready for marriage, they are stronger, more empathetic, wonderful people. And I think we have to really realize that they are, from what they are going through, they just recognize that there's a whole great world and they're more appreciative of the world. And while it's hard for us to wrap our old-fashioned mind around it, old-fashioned meaning that we want a perfect person who at least presents themselves to the word perfect, they're such interesting people. They have had experiences in life. That being said, you have to know that you really can handle whatever the medical condition brings. If the medical condition brings that for 2 hours every single morning they have to go on some sort of machine, you have to see if you can handle it. Some people can handle it more because and some people can handle it less. But I wouldn't totally dismiss because they have a condition. On the other hand, you will have to really get to understand what it means to have that condition and what it means to be the spouse of someone who has that condition. What is their life going to be like, and what is your life going to be like? Like, if your life is just going to be that you're not going to have any gluten in the house because your spouse is so allergic that you can't have gluten, it's an adjustment, but it's reasonable. But for some people, not being able to have their homemade challah is a big deal, which means that they're not fully evolved. But fully understand it, and that's the role of the one who has the condition. And everyone has a condition, but some are more obvious, to fully explain it. And it's not. I strongly believe that it's not a something that has to be disclosed, like as if if there's a failure that I have to disclose. It's something that has to be shared. It's part of who you are. It's part of what makes you the unique person, the strong person that you are, or your child is.
How and when should my child share about an uncomfortable topic, like a medical condition, mental health, divorce in the family?
And there's 100 other little nuances and
Yeah.
some kids feel that they have things that they have to hide. And where they got that information that they have to hide it, it comes from further back. And that's what makes it more difficult, that if it was something that they were told that they have to hide, it makes it more difficult to share. And sometimes they feel like they have to disclose it when really they should be sharing it. And I think that from whenever that situation started arising in the family, whether it was from birth or the divorce happened at a certain age, or the medical condition popped up at a certain age, when it should be done this is part of your life. This is who you are. We don't have to hide it. We don't have to flaunt it, because who wants to be bothered every single day someone's calling? So how's her condition today? I mean, I know personally, I just want my privacy and I don't want to be bothered by every single neighbor. So I don't need to flaunt it, but I don't have to hide it. And when you don't hide it, it's just part of who I am. But now let's assume that it has been hidden until now, so she's not so confident with it. There's a great article by Rabbi Dr. Saratsky that I want to share it with you, who talks about the difference between disclose and share. And if you talk about it from the angle of, many of the people who have conditions become involved in different volunteer work or they choose their career based on this. So you start off coming from whatever it is that this became part of who you are. And then you say strong, and then maybe the next date. Remember, this is your story. You know how to unroll it. You control how much you're going to share at each time, and you can control how many questions you're willing to answer, because it's your story. So you decide how it works. But so you start off with mentioning how this impacted your life, but not in the way that how this impacted my life. The things that you are doing in your life because of this, and then you unpack later. I really feel strongly about this cause because it's something in my family, or like that. So it's just part of who I am, and I'm going deeper into who I am.
So the rule, date at least 2 times. That rule. When is it applicable? When is it not? Okay. Also, should they date till they hate?
Okay, so it's really 2 separate questions here. But date till they hate is, I know it rhymes, so it works. But beside that, okay. So again, going back to how you do your research, and your philosophy about that. If you're doing your research, and then you're leaving most of the understanding up to them, or you're doing so. If you're leaving most of the understanding up to them, and both sides know that, then first date, it's totally not going to go anywhere. We're all okay. We can both agree. Like if someone was misrepresented as being more Hasidic or more goal-oriented or more career-oriented, and it's just not going to go anywhere because our values are off, then I don't think you need to go for a second date. If it's I'm not sure, I don't feel anything, then a second date makes sense. And I especially if you feel like, if your child feels or that their first date didn't go well, that's where you might tell a shadchan that the date didn't go well. She really feels it didn't represent who she is. I mean, you could have had a zillion things going on. Grandmother could be sick, or could be almost dying, or there's a zillion things that someone doesn't present well. So instead of letting the other person say, I'm not interested, you tell the shadchan what happened. I mean, you have to say what happened, but I can just say I didn't come across as I am. So it really depends. It gets tricky when one wants to go out again and the other one doesn't. And then it's the role of the shadchan to try to understand what happened here. Is it that he didn't present well, or there are different values, or is it just that she really can't stand his looks? The end. She really can't. She can't get past it. And then that's a whole conversation. If people use looks as the quick excuse where they don't want to bother to figure out for themselves what's really bothering them, so they just say, I can't stand his looks. It's just an easy one. But really the role of the advocate, the role of the mashpia, the role of the coach, the role of the parent is what's really going on. If he didn't look like this, what do you think? I think that I like to tell my clients or the moms is enjoy the dating. So you don't hate the dating. Every date, you want to learn something new about the other person or what he knows about the world. He's a traveler. Where should I go next? Well, COVID, whatever. But where should I go next? What's your favorite place? What was your favorite book? What are you passionate about? Just enjoy the getting to know somebody. Now, it's a little bit easier for extroverts, but introverts also like to know the world. So if you think of it as an opportunity to first, try out your communication skills. Learn things about the world. It makes the dating a lot more enjoyable. It doesn't become as much as a tircha, as a bother. And then you have a very clear goal of what you're trying to find out about somebody. So you can't just say, I just don't feel it. What do you know about this other person? And your goal is to experience the person, not only to make a checklist of finding, know that it's a no, but you have to work with the goal of what you want to find out.
Let's talk about the role of moms, the shadchan, and other advisors.
What's the role of the outsiders, of the other people? We touched on it a little bit. The role of the mother, most important, that you know that she's talking to somebody, not her friends. Somebody wise, somebody who's been married for a while, somebody who knows how to help her find the answers within herself, help her clarify within herself, ask good questions, but do not tell them, if that's what he said, then it must be this. If he drives so fast, and firstly, driving is just a man thing. Don't use driving to infer anything. You can possibly infer from other things, but not driving. Just take that off. Don't use that. The role of anybody, and even as I would tell the young people, is that if she's not asking you questions but telling you what to do, they're not doing their role. They should be asking good questions. So I give a whole class on the role of the mom about what are those questions, how to ask, the language of those questions, timing of those questions, and actually works pretty well for you because it's a decent hour. Thing is that when the shadchan wants an answer back by 9 a.m. New York time, you're still sleeping. And it's even harder when the date is in California and the mom is in New York. Shadchan wants an answer by morning. So basically, if you're going to be on an off schedule, tell the shadchan, it takes me 2 days to get back to you. So no one's waiting on hold. Everybody knows that this is the schedule. So that's to that question. But really, the role is to be asking, helping them make sense of what they experience. The first time around is that help them have how they're going to unroll their life story, what words they might use, what stop points. You unroll a little, see how it was received, and unroll some more, game plan, but then just listen and help them come up with the next level questions. That's the short of it. Many times, this is where I would come in as a coach and help the mom know her role. What should I tell my daughter next? And it becomes very individualized.
DEVORA, why won't guys come to Los Angeles to date?
They don't want to go anywhere. They won't even go to Baltimore from New York. But like I said before, Los Angeles is better than Winnipeg. Until Zoom, people didn't realize how they could actually work from remote. So they would be taking days off. Till then, and if it's a place where they actually have to pay for a hotel, it becomes an expense. And it becomes, if it's days off, really a real possibility, which I'm so glad Zoom helps in that. So a lot has changed. This question I answered differently now because there is that Zoom possibility. People are able to work remotely, so it's not as complex. But still, it's hard to just pick yourself up, for an unknown.
My daughter is going to New York. Can I line up a few guys for her to meet?
It makes sense practically that if you were buying a house, you can line up a few houses. It makes sense. Let's maximize from our time. But we're talking about people. We're talking about trying to build a relationship. So while you could have the first person that they want to go out with, and if this doesn't work, then another person, but not telling him, I'll let you know when she'll be in New York. Are you interested in meeting? That kind of thing. But I'm not a big proponent of meeting two people at the same time or meeting two people one day after another. It's just, while it makes sense practically, it doesn't make sense for a human. So I'm not a big proponent, but I do see that people do say it. You're asking from my perspective, I wouldn't do it. Unless you're there for a month, then she can have one for the first week and see how that goes. Then a month, a few weeks later, but you still need to decompress or, need to clear the slate from person to person. You don't want to merge that guy and that part is from this guy. Well, I can't merge them into one new potential husband. It doesn't work that way.
What other ways can I get more relatable ideas or suggestions for my child? And I know you addressed it all the way at the beginning about networking, but maybe we have a lot more women that join. So maybe you can recap about the networking and not relying only on shadchanim.
So where are potential shidduchim coming from? Well, one of the things that I do is when I call for research on my son, I describe my son. I don't call as Mrs. Cohen or Mrs. Smith. I say who I am, and I say, let me describe my son to you. You describe the girl, I'll describe my son, and we'll see if there's something here. And in that describing, I'm networking. This person knows this girl, maybe she knows another girl. So I've gotten some interesting, first of all, I would get people like, really? You're giving your kid's name? You're giving your name? You're describing your kid? Yeah, I want to move this along just as much as everyone else does, and I don't have time for two conversations. Right now, I'm calling this one. I mean, I do have time for two conversations. My son is worth all the conversation when I'm doing research, and many times it's not for her. And then we come up with other shidduchim ideas because in that way, I'm not one to hide behind Mrs. Cohen, the name Mrs. Cohen. Your friends, your neighbors, your classmates. I'm not big on the WhatsApp groups of sharing the profiles. That goes back to our profile part of our conversation. Of just like sharing a bunch of different names that people can scroll through it and look at the picture. Oh, she came up again. She was just here 2 weeks ago. Like that kind of thing. I'm not big into that. It has worked for people, but it has to work in different ways. Some people like the zillion darts. I can tell you as a mom of a boy, when you throw a zillion names at me, I'm so overwhelmed. And from the other side, like they all start sounding exactly the same because you're throwing a profile that's sounding exactly the same. And I have only a limited amount of hours this week. So I'm going to pick the names that sound interesting, or I know the mom, or I don't remember the mom as being a bully from high school. So, because if I get 5 names in one day, and I know I'm not boasting, it's just because I'm throwing darts because my son is of a certain age and a certain category, because they make no sense. These names, so it's not boasting. It's really hard. It's hard work on the other side. If you put yourself out onto a lot of chats, you may get a lot of darts that mean nothing. So I think that it's really about being creative in your networking and who you're going to talk to. You can make yourself like a little to a high school friend, and tomorrow I want to talk to a local friend. You can just WhatsApp. It's not as if you already described your child to someone, you just need to remind them that you exist. Like I said, we're humans. Last in, first out about you, not because they don't care, but they're just so busy. And if they are a good networker, they probably got a few people networking. And so you just have to remind them. All it is like a text. Do you have anything new for my son today? If you're going to reach out to someone, ask them their preferred way of hearing from you every so often. Do they want it by WhatsApp? Do they want it by text? Do they want an email? Do they want a voice note? A picture?
When you're talking about describing, what should you and should you not talk about your children when you describe them?
Okay. I hate the word but. He's a good kid, but he's not wearing the white shirt anymore. Like, just, I'm just using it. Whatever the but. So don't use the but. You can use the and at the same time. He's a good Hasidic kid, and at the same time, he's going to school. Not but he's going to school. Because also that means that you're not quite happy with your child. And it's harder to convince someone to marry someone whose mother is not that happy with him. They're not going to be happy with me as a daughter-in-law either. So I don't want to get into that family. So that's my first thing, is don't use the word but. In general in life, and rather than but. That's the first thing. Then just make your child stand out from all the other kind, respectful people. Because everyone's child is kind and respectful, except for those the mom says but. So if you just for a high lifeline, it's going to stand out a little bit. I mean, at this point, lots of kids have done that. Is studying something besides if they're studying something that's not therapy, then they'll stand out. If they're studying therapy, they sound like a lot of other people, which is not to be a horse trainer, they'll stand out. Or if they have an interesting hobby like whale watching, they'll stand out. So you want to, and it's not a weird thing. And if your child is studying, is involved in whales, and that's who they are, they want someone who can appreciate. Figure out where your child stands and what makes them unique amongst all the other wonderful B'nos Yisrael that we have. B'nos Chabad, B'nos Yisrael that we have. On the other hand, if your child, just to say that if your child has some time, Zoom, or do something interesting. Do something interesting, not just because you sound interesting, but become interesting. So find what it is, and at the beginning, that my classmates, we did a conference call, and my daughter, Shidduch, came directly from that conference call. When we did the second conference call, someone described her son as he's the type of guy that built our deck one summer. That this guy cut the wood and made the deck for his mother, and she knows that this girl's father is very into that, and the whole family's into woodworking. So that's what she remembered. Now, it's not something about his personality now that he built our deck, and she actually included a photo of the deck that he made to show the precision that he did. But that's made him stand out. I'm not a big believer in pictures. Back in the 1990s when we got married, people didn't share pictures. I think that pictures are lies anyway. I remember her, so I went through the whole thing. Is it that you can't stand looking at her because you don't want to bother coming up? She's beautiful. The picture is beautiful. I saw the picture. Turns out when I saw her, I could see what he was saying. Her features were a little bit prominent, and he couldn't stand it. But the picture not lied, but she managed to get the best profile. So the pictures don't say very much unless you're really good. Like those people who are body language readers for profession. Pictures don't say very much. And besides the fact that if you should, because there are so many pictures where she's the third one on the left, the one that's wearing the pink gown. Like, get a proper headshot. They cost a little bit, but get a proper headshot if you believe in pictures. As a mom, I don't ask for my girls and for my boys. I don't ask for pictures. But on the other hand, what people are seeing from 3 years ago. One bacher tells me that he's having a hard time. So I looked in his Facebook feed. There's a picture of him at a barbecue with 2 hot dogs coming out of his mouth and 5 hot dogs in his 2 hands. I told him, get rid of that picture. He's like, no, we had a fun party. I said, just get rid of the next girl he went out. She said, thank you for taking that picture. I would never have gone out with him. Pictures matter, but sharing a picture and people investigating and finding pictures is 2 different things. Because if this is the picture that you are sharing with me, and this is the best, not paying enough attention to the pictures, and you're not taking it seriously enough. Finding her and her cousins telling you that she's a third on the left is a different story. That's inevitable. People are going to find pictures. Nobody doesn't have a digital footprint anymore. My son has gone out with many girls, and I see a pattern. After 3-4 dates, he doesn't feel connected, no feeling toward the girl. When I look at the big picture, I see the girl has everything he was looking for, but I don't want to push him too much. But I feel something stops him from moving on. What should I do? That's typical. It seems from what you're describing, he doesn't know how to date effectively. He doesn't know what he's looking for. He doesn't know what to be doing. I don't think that there's anything wrong with any of the girls, and I think that later on, once he figures out how to date effectively, we might revisit some of them, because I don't think he was doing it right. I don't think he was really engaging in a conversation. I think that he might need some good questions to start. He may need to learn how to tap into. Some of them have very high expectations of what they should be feeling because they say, and while it's not true, but they say that guys feel it right away, or they know that it's wrong, which is not true. There's a zillion different types of guys, and there's a zillion different types of dating, and people get into relationships in different ways. And even if he would have gotten into a relationship with somebody and it didn't turn out to a marriage, otherwise he's not still dating, this could be different with this other person. We have certain friends bring out certain sides of us, and we like them for that, and I expect something different for a different friend. So he needs to have a better it seems like he needs to have a fuller understanding of what dating could be. It's not just chatting about small talk. Actually, I'm not a big proponent of small talk to begin with. I think we should go straight into real talk. There's a study, if you want to Google it, called 36 Questions. And it was done as 36 questions to help people get really connected, or I don't know what they called, to help someone fall in love with you or something. But the point is, the more personal you share, the more connected people are. They say this now in business, and business is all about relationships. So this is how you create relationships. Get personal. And small talk is not personal. I don't mean private, and there's a difference between personal and private. You're studying law. What made you get into law? There's a story here. It's a personal story, not what does a lawyer do. So, while if the article is relevant, some of the questions that they have are great. Some of them are less relevant to our lifestyle. But the concept of get personal, people enjoy when people ask them about them. And so I don't know if the girl is picking up on his not willingness to talk about himself. Generally people mirror the other one, and so she asks him about himself, and they end up getting to know the person in the person. As a way of thinking, it's not what you do, but how did you get into that? She may feel more of a personal connection, and that's when looks matters less, when you actually have a good personal connection with whoever you're talking to. We all know that people have good relationships with people who are not beautiful, or are taller, shorter, fatter, because we just enjoy the person. Not everyone has to be beautiful in the traditional sense, whatever the traditional sense of beauty.
Thank you so much, DEVORA. I'm so sorry to cut you off, but we have like a few minutes left to bring in the next group. I would like to thank you so much for your incredible, insightful words and guidance and practical takeaways. We will certainly put to good use immediately. DEVORA, can you please give us all a bracha?
A bracha, wow, you put me on the spot. I think the bracha is wisdom and the words to know how to express your wisdom, the questions to ask, and enjoy the journey of getting to know your child, and don't rush it, because rushing doesn't really get anywhere, but enjoy the journey.
Amen.
Enjoy the detours, enjoy the bumps. We get stronger from the bumps.
That's right. Thank you all for participating in Hashem's holy work. And let us daven that Hashem will open our eyes to see our children's Shidduchim with clarity, with ease, very, very soon. And we should be able to see the Beis HaMikdash and the arrival of Mashiach very, very soon. Feel free to DM me if you have any suggestions of speakers, of guest ideas, of what you would like to enjoy during these Zoom events. And for those of you who have not heard yet, if you have a son looking for a shidduch for a nice, wonderful California girl, direct message me for any suggestions. And stay tuned for the upcoming OC Shidduch Network meeting. Mitzvah Hashem. We should all not have to fast and celebrate in Mitzvah Hashem in Yerushalayim Meher V'Yameinu Mamish now.
Anyone who wants to reach out to me, the best way is info@adayad.org, or if you want to do it anonymously, you can send it to the anonymous website. But if you reach out anonymously, I can only answer you in a general way. But I can't do this work if I share your information. It's not my story to tell. I mumble jumble, and there's no way you can. When I share anything, it's a mumble jumble of information, because most of your questions are not unique. It's just they're unique to you. Think they're unique, but they're really several people have had those questions. So info@adayad.org, and I look forward to talking to you.
Is ADAIAD.
All A's.
.org.